Awesome. What's good, y'all? Hello, 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 hello. I am back, and I had started watching some YouTube videos on how to properly be a YouTuber, and one of the things that they were talking about was like having a dynamic voice. But fuck all of that shit. I'm just gonna continue to be myself, and like whoever these messages are for, it's for you. I'm really excited today because I don't know, like last night I just had so much energy in my body and it was like uncomfortable. Like I could barely sleep. I haven't really been able to sleep much for the past couple of days. Like when you're like lying in bed and you're kind of like half asleep, but you're very much still present. That's kind of like what it was, and it took an exercise of me sort of like releasing some emotional baggage for me to finally lay myself to rest. So that's a whole nother conversation, but yeah, pretty much what that had me thinking about this morning was getting back into my reading and just understanding like why the world around me operates how it does. And one of the things that I really like to focus on, as you guys are coming to see, is, what is it to be psychic? Who is psychic? And what are the implications of us having this type of information and insight? Are there already pieces of evidence out there that shows us what it means for human beings to be conscious of the fact that we not only sense with our five senses, but there are extra sensory perceptions that we have as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and jump right into it. Yeah, so what I wanted to break down essentially is everybody, all of us are aware that the earth has its own electromagnetic field. And this electromagnetic field is what's preventing planet Earth from suddenly oscillating off course and hitting Mars, or it's what prevents, um, you know, our gravitational pull from being so strong that the moon suddenly crashes into us one day. Electricity is what moves our whole entire galaxy, and that's evidenced by our electromagnetic field, which has been studied, but it's also evidenced by our internal magnetic field, which is what I had just been reading about, and I think it's really cool to consider. So, how the electromagnetic field influences us is through our central nervous system. And so, many of us, when we think about the central nervous system, we think of fight or flight, right? Our central nervous system, we also think of our nerves. And what do these nerves do? So, these nerves are kind of like a communication highway, and they allow the neurochemistry of who we are to radiate throughout our body and dictate what our cells should be doing at any given moment based upon either our own dictation and our own commands or that of an external influence such as the electromagnetic field. Super cool, right? So in the reading, it was saying that there have been studies that show when the Earth's electromagnetic field rises in psychiatric hospitals, there is an increase of patients who get admitted. There's an increase of epileptic seizures, which we can all understand why that would be, right? It's that hyperstimulation that sends our neurons into overdrive and kind of creates these convulsions within us that are seemingly uncontrolled. They were also talking about just how the EMF, the increase of that, also impacts cardiovascular diseases. And it made me think about my own father and his blood pressure and just the idea of stress, right? Stress being the biggest killer. And that stress is just stimuli that we aren't able to process in a healthy way so that we can use that energy to our advantage, or acknowledge it and release it because it's not for us. So those are just very accessible examples of how the electromagnetic field um, dictates how we as human beings operate on a biological level. So it's just super cool. So now that we've talked about that and you guys kind of already know where I'm at, why don't we go ahead and talk about certain phenomena that I've experienced that show me, hey, like these researchers, these scientists, they're onto something that I intuitively already acknowledge in my being or have examples of in my life. So, yeah, I already kind of gave the example of like what happened to me last night and just feeling just surge of energy and not being able to, again, process what that energy meant for me. Um, And what led me to this kind of video is I started thinking in my mind, wow, for so long, I thought I had anxiety and I was just an anxious person, when in reality, you might just be hypersensitive to this environment and nobody's giving you the proper tools or education as to how to deal with these um, means of perception, right? They don't even want you to acknowledge the fact that you sensing those things is valid. That's when you start getting labeled as bipolar. Again, you're like hyper anxious, manic, schizophrenic, all of these different things start to get attached to you simply because we as a civilization have not been hip or haven't prioritized actually understanding what is going on with people in these situations. And bringing up the schizophrenia, that was another thing that the psychiatric hospitals noticed too. People were having more schizophrenic episodes as the electromagnetic fields of the earth increased. So stop putting it on people and start doing your job as a medical system and help us. So right, one of the things that I thought of as an example was when I was young, babies were not really fucking with me like that. Babies were not messing with me. They would see me and go somewhere else. My brothers used to tease me about this all of the time. And obviously, as somebody who is femme, I have a womb that like really can be triggering. And I internalized this idea that I was just like not good with babies. Babies don't like me. So I'm going around, right, carrying the aura of that mentality now anytime I see a baby. And one thing that we don't really give enough credit to is our emotions, again, are chemicals, right? And those chemicals have a charge. Within our body, we also have an electric circuitry and we radiate the different frequencies that are represented in the different processes that are going on in our body. So our what we radiate, the frequency that we radiate at, isn't always going to be the same ever, and it's not going to be complete throughout the entire body. We have an optimal level that we should be radiating at as a frequency for our health, and then we have, you know, kind of like the breakdown of different organ systems and how they're actually radiating due to, you know, an impairment. You know, you could have like a weaker frequency in certain areas than others, or maybe you're really strong. You're really like a strong vocal person, so your like throat, you know, your respiratory system might be radiating at a higher frequency than other elements in your body. That's why things like meditation are so important, because it's the idea of achieving this equilibrium. Optimal health is described as achieving a equilibrium or a perfect balance, a harmony within and throughout your body and also in your environment if you really want to get there. But that's more related to holistic health. And right now we're just focused on this that's happening right here. So back to the story. Basically, I was keeping it in my mind that I was not able to interact with children. And so it wasn't until, I would say, this past year that I did some womb healing work and allowed myself to feel the depression and the death that I was carrying within my womb, because I had already written myself off as somebody who could create life, nurture life, and shelter life. And when I finally was able to release the frequency of that mentality, I will never forget. It was literally the same exact weekend I had started this 21-day detox for Queen Afua, and I had started menstruating. Like, it was just like Goddess was like, yes, go deep, dive deeper, and a child that I had recently met finally came up to me and was like warm to receiving my comfort and care. Now, that was an amazing feeling. And I was so confused as to what had happened, but I'm lying. I knew exactly what it was. I knew it had been the shift in my mentality, which shifted and changed on a chemical level how I was experienced by this child. Because we all know children are the most sensitive and the most honest about how they're perceiving stimuli in their environment. So if a child thinks you're ugly and crazy and rude and terrible, you are going to know. And if a child genuinely loves you, you are going to know, because they are we're all reflections of each other, right? But that child is even more so a reflection of our electromagnetic state. So that was beautiful. That was really cool. And yeah, just a really small example of how these energies are more than just the words that we're using, but like practical things that are happening in our everyday life that make sense as to how we as human beings relate to one another. Yeah. Yes. I thought that was really cool. I want to do another video and dive deeper into the dynamics of that and relationships. I hear my dog at the door. So y'all already know it means it's time for me to go. But thank you guys so much. Please let me know what you think about these things down below in the comments. It's a rad world that we live in. 2021 is the year of no elitism when it comes to like the psychic community, or people who are interested in parapsychology or psychotronics. It's time for us to really recognize our own innate ability to understand and perceive the world around us beyond what we've been taught. And I'm really down to just be a part of that ride and see where things go. So yes, that was awesome. Hope you guys liked this video. Share, comment, all of that good shit. All right, bye.